Ladies and gentlemen, I want to share with you one of my favorite pastimes, and that is watching biopics, especially about these titans of business, if you will, who are founding these different institutions that have gone nationwide, worldwide, and have made a great impact on all of our lives. And I just watched the movie with the Batman that I grew up with, Michael Keaton. It was a movie called The Founder from 2016. And it was about Ray Kroc, who basically was a milkshake salesman who was going across the country trying to innovate in the restaurant industry. And he came across the McDonald's brothers. Now, he was one of these guys who was always in search of a new venture, always in search of a new way to make money. And he had kind of burned a lot of bridges. His reputation was a little shot because he was a guy who had these harebrained ideas that he wanted people to invest in. But it wasn't until he took control, till he took ownership of his own destiny, of where he wanted to go and how he wanted to come through in life. It was not until then that he decided, or his life really took a turn for the better. He saw what many of the people around him couldn't see, which is why I say that I gleaned from that movie that we all have to have belief in the things that are unseen. Some people may say that we look crazy when we decide to step out on a hunch, when we decide to go after things that seem a little outlandish. You've got people in this world who will put a second mortgage on their house in order to get the capital to start a business. A business that nobody around them believes in, by the way. And if you were to look at the balance sheet, if you were to call in an accountant, if you were to get business advice, these people are only able to advise you from a place of safety and comfort. Whereas as an innovator and entrepreneur, you have to be able to step on faith. You have to be able to allow your boat to sail out so far into the ocean to where you can't see the shore anymore. And in many cases, you will find yourself alone. But the key is to never stop believing in the vision that you have. I look at it as we all, as people who want to push the envelope, as entrepreneurs, as innovators and free thinkers in this world, we all have to reach this point of no return and then be willing to push past it. Often, whenever you decide to do something different, I don't care what it is, you're going to face these obstacles that are going to give you every signal to turn back. And instead of turning back, you have to push forward. Instead of looking at the road signs, the caution signs, even the stop signs in life, you have to blow past all that if you want to be remembered. Now, believe me, I'm not naive. And I know there'll be plenty of you out here who watch this video who will sit here and say, well, what about all the people who have that frame of mind to push past all the warnings and the signs, to keep going, to keep pouring money into a venture that doesn't look like it has a future, and in many cases it doesn't have a future? What about the people who fail? And my answer to that is, what about them? History doesn't remember the people who fail. History remembers the people who persevere, who make a success of their vision. in the physical world. Now, I know everybody is not going to be fortunate enough to make it to that goal or to that point where they've made history during their lifetime. But the only way that you'll have a chance to make it to that point is to push past all of the stumbling blocks, all of the signs that tell you to turn around, all of the doubters, the people who are lined up waiting on your downfall, the people who are watching you step out on faith and do something that is uncommon. And as they stand there waiting on you to come crawling back to the comfort of the familiar settings and the circumstances and the people, as you keep going through the struggle, as you keep pushing towards the goal, you've got to remember that if you want to be remembered, you've got to keep persevering. Not everybody is able to do that. And I don't like using the word failure, because we all will experience some type of setback at some point. Even the people that we admire face several setbacks throughout their lives. But again, they pushed forward. And we all have that opportunity. I believe that nobody is particularly special based on any natural gifts that will make them successful. Yes, you have people who are prodigies. I will acknowledge that. People who show signs of gifts at a very, very early age. But even all of the people who are gifted from an early age don't make it to the point where their gift materializes in a life that makes them memorable. It doesn't mean that you'll have a life that will have impact. So you've got to remember that it's not about the gifts. It's about the grit. Are you able to keep going when things are looking crazy? It reminds me of the Apple Computer Corporation, or whatever the name of it is. Started by Steve Jobs, and I forget what the other founder's name is, but for those of you who are familiar with Apple products, you know precisely who I'm talking about. And Apple gets to the point in growth where they make products and technology where they can attract investors. And as these investors come into the company, these guys whose vision is only trained to look at what's on a balance sheet, they decide that Steve Jobs, the lifeblood of the company, is too extravagant. He's spending way too much money. I mean, now he's founded, grown, and attracted these investors into a business that has to pay a lot of people's salary. And these people whose salary that are getting paid off of the vision of a Steve Jobs decide that he's no longer necessary because of what it says on a balance sheet. Forgive me if you can hear that in the background, but it's the 4th of July and somebody's setting off fireworks. But either way, this video is going up. But back to what I was saying. These people on a board decide to fire the visionary of the company. And when they do that, when they look at a person who they feel like is too large of a liability to keep on the staff, they cut off a very intangible gift or intangible asset that the company has. And in doing so, now they have to start from scratch. You can't measure what is going to make a person or a unit of people, a group of people, a business, a corporation successful. Most of the time, what separates victory from defeat is stuff that you can't see. Even the Bible says that we walk by faith and not sight. There are things that just can't be quantified in this life. And many of these things determine success or failure, life or death. So understand that as you go through life, I don't know what your particular passion is, what your particular goals are. Just remember that you are going to encounter situations that are going to make you want to turn back, that are going to make you want to quit. And before you do that, I would urge anyone listening to find a success story. Find several success stories that you can lean on and use as a resource to fuel you when you begin to feel the doubt creep in. When the critics who surround us all begin to get a little too loud, when they start to drown out our own inner voice, understand that there are people in this world who have excelled under much more difficult circumstances than we currently face. And that's a fact. But I just wanted to leave you with that message, as I was inspired by the movie The Founder. And I think about how all of the goals that I've ever pursued have brought along challenges that made me want to turn back and give up. Sometimes I have, and other times I kept going to the detriment of the perception of people around me. Some people think I'm crazy. Some people have just decided to leave me alone in hopes that I would fail. But the vision, the goal, the unseen forces around me, in my head, in my heart, and in my gut, have allowed me to keep going. You can say whatever you want about Ray Kroc and his business tactics, but if you see a man go from putting his pride aside and selling milkshake machines door to door and dealing with the rejection left and right, you can get a clearer understanding of why he turned out the way he did when he finally did find that formula to success. You know, they say once you get your opponent down, you got to keep your foot on it, on the neck. And that's what he did. And in all honesty, when I look at my opponent, and if I'm honest with myself, the biggest opponent that I have stares me in the mirror every morning. It's not that I don't have people who doubt my ability. It's more about the fact that I myself doubt my own ability. And at the end of the day, as soon as I can overcome those doubts and those obstacles that I lay out in front of me on my own path, I will gain the advantage over that opponent, put my foot on its neck, and keep it there. Because when I get to the point where I'm in a rhythm, the work is not going to stop. And I would say to anybody watching this video, find your inspiration. Believe in the forces unseen. And always keep your foot on the enemies of your successes' necks. That's my video for today. I will be back real soon